Hey everybody, welcome back to the Geek XP. My name is Kyle.
I'm Marley.
And I'm Carson.
And I'm Brandon.
Brandon is Skyping in with us to talk about our review, full review, for Logan, which just came out this weekend.
If you haven't seen it yet, don't watch this.
Turn this off, go watch it, or if you don't care about spoilers, or if you've seen the movie, here we go. So, giant three-clawed elephant in the room. Wolverine dies in this movie, and it's fucking awesome. It's totally... This is the movie, we talked about it briefly.
Yeah.
To my sensibilities, this is the movie, not only did the Wolverine from X-Men originally, but also Hugh Jackman deserves for all the work that they've done. Not only for X-Men, but for superhero movies in general.
Yeah.
Brandon, what did you think?
Oh, I totally agree. In terms of how different this felt from the other movies, really, to me, pointed out how out of place Wolverine's character felt in a PG-13 version of X-Men films. And I think PG-13 was fair for X-Men, but being familiar with the regular content that Wolverine has, it felt strange to not have him act like Wolverine, which he does in this movie.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
It was also nice, I was saying to Marley the other day, it was nice to finally see, like, the ugly, rude, violent Wolverine that we're supposed to have. Like, because he's always been so pretty and well-coiffed and charming.
He's supposed to be messy.
He's supposed to be this ugly,
dirty,
tiny, jacked Canadian dude that we never really saw because Hugh Jackman's handsome as fuck.
Yeah.
And now we got to see that, and it was like, this is the Wolverine we've been waiting for, and now he's done. But,
yeah, he just eviscerates people.
They come out of the gate so violently, and it was like he started off being like, "Guys, just go away." You know, you have the opening scene where the carjackers are trying to steal his limo or whatever because he's a chauffeur, and he's trying to take them out, and then when he gets knocked down, he does that rage scream and then just completely kills them. And you think, I thought, oh man, he was trying not to do that, and there was going to be a moment after the fight where he was like, fuck, but there wasn't.
Nope.
He was just like, well, that happened.
Yeah, gotta get back to driving your Uber.
Yeah.
Also, Deadpool at the beginning.
Oh, the Deadpool teaser was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, that was really good.
It was really funny, and then when he just lied down on the dead guy and was eating ice cream, it was just too good.
Well, I thought it was good because looking back on the older X-Men films, they wouldn't even show the real point of contact when he used to stab people.
Yeah,
I remember at the end of X3,
the closest we've ever gotten was in X-Men 2 when they're raiding the mansion.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
He would stab
anytime
people.
He would stab people, it would cut above, you would hear the noise, and then it would pan down, and you would see his claws through the person. And so in the very beginning of this movie, when they're not only showing the point of stabbing, but stabbing through faces, through heads, cutting people's limbs off, it was very much a message to the audience. Is this is buckle up because this is gonna be rough. If you got kids, get out. This is not.
Yeah, and we mentioned in our spoiler-free review, the violence didn't feel forced, and it felt different than the violence in Deadpool, which was really over the top and goofy.
Yeah.
And this violence just felt like it was earned, number one. And two, this is just what it would look like to watch someone with claws fight people. This really violent.
Yeah.
So getting into some more spoiler stuff, things we want to talk about. X-23 in this movie is amazing.
Yeah, wonderfully handled.
Yeah.
Really well done. I like that, in the comics it's she's a clone. And I don't know how deeply they delve into a father-daughter relationship between those two.
It happens later on.
But with such a familial tone in X-Men stories, seeing them tackle that family and father figure story between those two, and that slow build of it, that moment near the end when he's really sick and tired in Eden, what is called Eden, and he's people I care about die, and she's like, well then I'll be fine. And then the payoff later of her calling him dad, crushed me into bits and pieces. And just to talk more about his death, the finality of Wolverine, it was just so perfect. And I'm so glad they did it. If you were to have asked me a couple years ago, will they ever actually kill Hugh Jackman's Wolverine? I'd be like, no. 20th Century Fox is a soulless machine that cranks out movies without giving a shit. And they did it. And I think it's because it was a little bit lower budgeted than their other X-Men films.
Yep.
A lot of the creators invested a lot personally into making this movie, and they wanted to make something good.
I think Hugh Jackman was a producer on this.
Yeah.
So, he had a lot of say.
Yeah, that it's also Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart's final, doing Xavier and Wolverine for them respectively.
Yeah.
So like I think one, it was appropriate for that because Hugh Jackman wasn't going to renew his contract. But for a character like Wolverine to sort of like fight and claw to the very end, but sort of like lose his fighting spirit, then sort of find it again, and then his death. At the very end of the film, there's the scene where the kids have left and X-23 or Laura comes back and she turns the little cross they made on his grave and turns it over into an X. And to
my heart
me,
exploded in my
yeah,
chest.
that was such a perfect moment, and I didn't see it coming, and I probably should have. But when she does that, it was just like, this is not only just like a farewell to Wolverine, it's sort of a farewell to the X-Men franchise as we know it, because they've really relied on Wolverine for a lot of the stuff within the films. Like, he was really like their poster boy, which makes sense.
Well, the first 3 X-Men movies are Wolverine and his friends.
Yeah, basically. So I really liked that moment. And I hope that if they do revisit Wolverine in films, it's much, much farther down the road. Hopefully when the X-Men now, when they belong to Marvel Entertainment again.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
I would really just, at this point, just want a hard reboot of that entire franchise.
Yeah, start with like the original 5.
Yes.
Like X-Men and Xavier.
Save Wolverine
and maybe
for like
start
the second
taking
one.
out some of like their original, bad guys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just go, to the roots of it.
Well, something I've always talked about with you guys, and this is actually a good forum to talk about, with the death of Wolverine and Hugh Jackman's exit, inevitably, whether it's while it's still owned by 20th Century Fox or when Disney/Marvel finally takes back those properties as they're slowly just eating everything, the idea of how do you reintroduce a character like Wolverine, especially one who's been so iconic in the superhero movie genre in general, because like a lot of people aren't going to be able to move past Hugh Jackman. And in the spirit of trying to keep it honest to the comics, something I've talked to you guys about is, like you said, starting with the original 5 for the X-Men, building that family dynamic, which is so important. And this is the first X-Men movie I felt like really captured it in a bottle. And then have either in a side like end credit scene or a Hulk movie or Wolverine's first movie, do Wolverine versus Hulk. It's his first. It's his first interaction in exploration in the comics, and they've already established how badass Hulk is with all the Avengers movies and the first Hulk movie. Not that horrible Eric Bana travesty, but have a movie that opens up with, okay, you're gonna meet Wolverine for his first day with you guys. He's gonna take on the Hulk and survive, and just show like he's working with the Canadian government as a like assassin agent, and just like show that he doesn't listen to authority, that he's this insane violent animal who can fight the Hulk toe to toe and be good afterwards and not dead, and then have him meet the X-Men, start to develop a family relationship, and like a whole thing in the comics is like Cyclops is in charge and Wolverine doesn't get along with him, but in the comics he's like, you're in charge, and you like, if we all listen to you, we're going to survive this. And he learns that, and he develops this family connection. And then, if you establish Wolverine's this badass who can go toe-to-toe with the Hulk, but when Cyclops says, we're doing this, and Wolverine listens, that then means something. Because this guy's a badass. But you need to develop that family dynamic in a new X-Men series, and establishing Wolverine like that for a new franchise would be incredible.
Well, I mean, we've already discussed now the big thing at the end. But in terms of other elements within the movies, what's one thing that you particularly liked, whether it was the pacing, whether it's the theming, whether it was like some of the side characters or certain scenes that you guys really liked? Marley, what was one of your scenes?
How much Wolverine was just straight to business. Like there was no like taking his time, and that's what Wolverine is. He's a do first, think later kind of guy.
He's a barbarian.
And this Wolverine was very much, he was just at the end of his wits. He was like, I don't have time for this.
That's absolutely true. And I think we mentioned it, well, I don't know if we mentioned it in our spoiler-free review, but that idea is encapsulated perfectly, I think, when in the scene when they're at the water pipe, when they're helping out the farmers. And, like, in X-Men Origins Wolverine, that Logan would have been like, hey guys, like, this isn't a big deal, just walk away, like, blah, 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 trying to talk it out. And this Logan just walks straight up, he's like, hey, go fuck yourselves and leave. And he's punching people, and he's breaking guns like a twig. Like, he just gets straight to the point. Like, if that had escalated, he would have taken his claws out and killed them. Because he's old, and he's tired, and he doesn't have the energy to play nice anymore. And that remained consistent, and I believed it so hard. And so I absolutely agree that was a great aspect of this movie.
Carson, what about you?
I really enjoyed the dynamic between Professor X and Logan, mainly.
Yes.
Just, introducing Professor X and his mental state that he's in. It was revealed that he kind of, went nuclear at the Institute.
At Westchester, yeah.
At Westchester.
He killed, 70 mutants.
I guess he has a brain disease, like Alzheimer's or something like that. And he lost control and killed a bunch of mutants.
Yeah.
And that was... they were hinting at it throughout the film, and then they finally, addressed it, and I was like, oh, my goodness.
Well, I mean, it brings up an interesting point that I think a lot of comic fans think about, and it's in the line from the evil Dr. Xander Rice, who says, what happens when the most powerful brain in the world is being eaten alive by a disease?
Yeah.
That's really dangerous. Objectively, you have to think about, that could end the world. You could have an episode and kill everybody.
Yep.
And he has that moment where he's like, my favorite part about this movie was, and we talked about this briefly, its ability to travel so seamlessly and so gracefully between epic, intense, hardcore violence and silent, dramatic moments.
It wasn't scared to be quiet.
Yeah, it slowed down and not held its breath, but allowed itself to breathe, which a lot of movies just go 11 to 11 to 11 to 11. And then the action sequences start to dumb you down.
Yeah.
But when we had that moment, it's really, to me, is the farmhouse. You had, some violence before that in Vegas.
Yeah.
And then they're at the farmhouse for a long time. And the scene where they're having dinner at the kitchen table, really encapsulates that family values, X-Men thing that I think has been so lost for so long.
Yeah, it was nice seeing them talk, Logan getting on Laura for her table manners.
Yeah, he was acting like a dad, and seeing him and Charles bicker, but not so brutally with one another. Yeah. And they smiled, and I smiled, it pulled my heartstrings. And Laura was in fascinated with music, and Logan was doing his "I'll help these guys with this thing."
Yeah.
And Charles had this really sad moment where he was confiding in who he thought was Logan, ended up being X-24. That this was so beautiful. It's all he's ever wanted. This is the family he's been missing for so many years.
Well, that was
and he feels even now, even after everything he did for the X-Men, for Mutant Kind, for Magneto, all of it, he doesn't feel like he deserves it because of what he did. Because he didn't take enough responsibility to look ahead, to think about what could happen to my brain.
Yeah. And
he just doesn't, I don't deserve this. I've done horrible things, and we never talk about it until that one moment when you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember, and he's has this beautiful confession, and unfortunately it goes to nobody. Mm-hmm. And then that nail is driven in the coffin even further when Logan picks him up and he's like, I didn't do this, and he's so, because he killed Jean, he stabbed Rogue in X-Men 1, he's like, please don't die thinking that I hurt you, you're my only friend left in the world. And then when he goes outside and he starts ripping apart this X-24 clone, who is objectively younger, faster, stronger, more brutal, and he starts tearing him apart, so satisfying. Yeah. Even though he couldn't win that fight, seeing him just go nuts and being able to go toe-to-toe with that old rage, he wasn't able to maintain, but it was get it. You can't copy that.
What was really brought up an interesting scene.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what was really sad was that Xavier didn't know he had killed the X-Men until he heard it on the radio. And that to me was just damn. Of course Logan would have protected him from that. But that was the moment that sort of put another little accent on that element of the story that we sort of had. I guess I didn't realize it until it was said on the radio. But then when he said he never knew, because of course Logan wouldn't tell him that, it was just that really sucks. All of this happening to him and, trying to wrestle with that. Yeah, that was rough.
What was your favorite part about this movie, Brandon?
Yeah, for me, it was the huge change in tone from, the way they handled their cinematography to the music to allowing for those slower beats really made this movie stand on its own and feel Wolverine, and that we knew going into it that we weren't going to get old man Logan. so going into this new story, dealing with X-23, it felt very much like a standalone graphic novel. Even if it was an alternate timeline, it very much felt like I could totally see this as an X-Men comic dealing with this alternate future where all the other X-Men are dead. And Logan, as a very old, dying man, has to sort of really find the family that he never had in the X-Men in this film franchise. Like, he never really felt that feeling of real love and family. Like, they tried doing it with Rogue, but it ended up feeling like this weird, like, sex, like, attraction thing at certain points,
there
which
were
was weird.
beats where I was like, are you two gonna...
Yeah, so, like, and so at the end, when he's just like, so this is what it feels like, to me, that was, like, the moment that was just, like, he gets to die happy. Like, he wanted to die for sad reasons, but then he dies with happiness, which is really nice. But also, like Guardians of the Galaxy, I think this movie opens the doors for more niche, genre-specific superhero films. That you can have a movie like this, which doesn't feel like the other X-Men movies in the best ways, but still does really well. And I think
this is like our first superhero Western.
Yeah.
Which I really liked it for that. I think, unfortunately, once again, we have another situation where the villains are relatively weak. They're evil because they're greedy and evil without too much character. Like, they have, like, like the Doctor, when he's like, the world's most powerful brain has a disease, what do you do? But to me, what I took away from the film is that they're not really our antagonists. Wolverine is our antagonist because he's the one fighting himself the most. The rest are
we
just
were
like
discussing
evil forces outside.
the absence of a legitimate villain, like a compelling villain, because so many stories, it's like, well, the villain was weak, or the villain was really strong here, the villain was the main character, but not every story, I think, needs that. And for, like you said, I think looking deeper into the movie, Logan's inability to fight and that loss of will is the antagonist, the true antagonist of this movie, and the bad guys are just a catalyst for conflict.
I will say, though, if you were going to have a villain kill Charles Xavier, I wish it was something cooler than a Wolverine clone.
I was kind of hoping that X-24 was going to be our Dakin. Like, I understand why they might not have gone that route, just because keeping the family connection between just Logan, Xavier, and Laura was fine. It would have been too much, I think, to add Dakin in there, but I think that would have been a more interesting person to kill Xavier.
Brings me to another, like, my one big beef with this movie is the death of Charles Xavier was so emotionally unsatisfying for me. I didn't feel anything other than, like, oh, I'm sad he's gone, but, like, I wanted a lot more from that death, and I didn't get it.
I know Carson agrees with this.
Yeah, I agree with that, too. I've just seen Charles throughout all these X-Men movies, and to see him kind of, like, slowly, like, die real quick, and he briefly probably thought that Wolverine actually killed him, which was sad, but he just died so quickly, and I've seen this character for so long, and he's such an important character.
He's almost as important to the X-Men as Wolverine is.
And I know this is titled Logan, this is Logan's movie, but Charles and him are, like, they're both equally very important characters almost, and I just wanted to feel a little bit more for this character passing away in this film. Marley had a really good idea, like, since they were playing off his mental illness a lot.
Yeah,
maybe they could have done a
he was
mercy
gonna
kill.
have an episode, and, like, Laura or Logan were gonna have to do it, and I thought that would have been really emotionally satisfying. But, like, as it was just a Wolverine clone snuck in, stabbed them, and it felt like almost like a if you blink you'll miss it kind of moment, which I think for a character as important as Charles, he deserved a lot better than that.
What do you think about it, Brandon?
Yeah.
I can see that. I think part of the appeal in that death is one, the sort of like what Kyle said with Logan saying, like, it wasn't me, and the concept or element that, our threshold Guardian villain, I don't think is weird robot hand Goldtooth McTarnation. I think it's...
They also, like, made him the douchiest, like, douchey southern accent, gold tooth wearing, neck tattoo branded douchebag who vapes. Like, they didn't make a scary villain. They made the douchiest fucking villain who absolutely would have voted Trump, the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like,
and so X-24 was an interesting sort of like,
I was like,
Logan facing the worst part of himself. Like, X-24 really was Logan earlier in his life when he was just an unchained killing machine.
Well, it was literally his past come to haunt him.
Right. So I thought that was kind of neat. I think that with that being, I think the concept behind it is that Logan literally can't help but be around people he cares about and them dying, and that, you know, it just happened so fast. Like, it was unceremonious and it was bloody and it was horrible. And, you know, I think that was supposed to make it feel more real and less cinematic. But I think I do agree that maybe I think it was a better death than his death in X3 when he got, like, disintegrated or whatever by Jean.
They just can't figure out a way to kill him and not have it suck.
Yeah, I'm glad that Jean actually wasn't mentioned at all in this movie. That made me really happy.
Yeah.
Because that was a big part, like, the Wolverine, there were some cool parts, but I hated he was like, oh, I'm not over Jean. It's been 7 years, man. Like, and they didn't talk about her at all.
Yeah.
But on this point of Professor X's death, being killed by X-24, I understand the want for a more meaningful and a death that a character who has given so much to the X-Men as characters and a franchise deserved better and a more emotionally satisfying death. My perspective on it is using it as a device in a film about Logan. I mentioned earlier that sadness of that being taken away was really important. I think, Brandon, you hit the nail on the head with even, you know, when Logan's talking about the comic books, he's like, you know, people died, like, and, you know, he says, I don't think Lara needs to be reminded about the impermanence of life, and that idea that, like, it doesn't happen beautifully, you don't get the death you deserve, and maybe even thinks in his last moments, this is the death I deserve, because he hates himself. But to me, it was this ugly, unceremonious death, like you said, which lent to the gritty, you know, Western realism of this film. And also, we were talking about it, sorry about that, we were talking about it that, you know, Wolverine's death at the end of the movie is this heart-wrenching, emotionally devastating meat grinder of emotion. And if you did that twice, one 3/4 of the way through the movie, one at the end, that last one would not hit you as hard.
See,
you don't have the emotional economy for it.
No, I think it's perfectly capable to care about both characters dying. We all loved Rogue One, and every character dies in that. And Jin and Caspian's goodbye, I think, is the saddest. And I didn't feel any less for that, even though earlier I had just watched K2 and everyone else die.
Yeah, I mean, it may have been different for certain people, and I don't think you're wrong. I just think that, like, for me, looking at the movie as a whole, if you had two incredibly emotionally devastating deaths of characters we really cared about and took the time to have this thing, it wouldn't hit as hard. I think with Professor X being Logan's last friend, I don't know if he would have been capable of doing that again. I think it would have broken him, and I don't think Laura would understand. Because when Laura saw X-24 stab Professor X, she went nuts. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if they would have had that strong father-daughter bond if she had seen him have to do that. Like, maybe she would have understood, but it would have been a harder sell. So I think maybe, you know, we obviously disagree on this. I think we can agree Professor X deserved a better death than he got.
I think the only other criticism, like a scene that stood out to me as not feeling right, was after he buried Xavier, we have this beautiful moment where Hugh Jackman puts a lot of nuance into saying nothing.
Yes.
Where he's standing there at the grave, and like his facial expression like tells it all. Like, he has all these really nice little like cues and facial gestures that he makes that shows just how Wolverine isn't equipped to deal with situations like this, where he actually feels something. And then when he goes and rages on the truck, instead of, I think it should have been a closer shot to focus on him some more. Doing the pan between when Laura's looking between him and the truck and then the fisherman's truck, Kyle, you and I talked about it. It felt goofy rather than tragic and frustrating.
I think they tried to lighten up the moment, but I think that was the wrong time to lighten it up. Because a couple minutes later at the doctor's office, we got that lighten up moment.
Yeah. And it felt like, you know, there was a lot of missteps in Iron Man 3, and one of them was thinking Pepper was dead, and then less than a minute later having a gag. And it was like, why would you do that? Like, why would you sully a deep moment with a joke?
Mm-hmm.
It looked goofy, and someone even laughed in the theater, and I was like, fuck. Wasted.
Yeah, and maybe there was a creative decision behind that, but I don't think I would have done the same thing. But other than that, there weren't too many moments like that where I felt like the scene didn't make me feel the way, because I thought it was kind of funny looking.
It was. No, it objectively was. Also, huge unsung hero of this movie is fucking Caliban. Yeah. Because his sacrifice, also, Wolverine thinks he's dead. Yeah. Nobody knows that Caliban sacrificed himself to save them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that is so sad. And he's strong-armed, and he's trying his best to keep them from finding them. Yeah. Yep. And at the end, he kills himself and is able to stop, Laura from being taken away, because without that, surely they would have stopped him. Yep. Yeah. So, like, Caliban saves the day. Nobody knows it. They undoubtedly will clone him.
Also, it's an element that we actually didn't cover, and I think that's sort of a shame. But in this movie, Logan is dying of adamantium poisoning from his skeleton covering, and to me, it was so refreshing to see a Wolverine, because before it was sort of hard to worry about Wolverine, because in the other movies he was so like brusque, but then he would heal from everything and not seem to really care about anything. So that, he would heal, but like watching him struggle was so great to see on screen.
And he was slow.
Yeah, he was slow, he was tired, he was in pain all the time. And I think that they do a good job of not explaining it through exposition, but by the time you get to the end of, near the end of the movie, and they don't outright say it, and I thought that was a great decision. But then, seeing him struggle made me, like, through the whole movie, I'm just like, I don't know if he's going to make it through this scene. Like, I halfway through the movie, I could totally buy, Logan biting it and Laura having to carry out the rest of the film. And then you sort of switch where you think that he might take on the Xavier role, but then them choosing to have him die was the right one.
Yeah. Yep. So we're going over a little bit on time, but before we do closing comments, final thoughts, one question I want to pose to you guys was, what do you think the future of Laura / X-23 will be in the movies? Will she go on to become the next Wolverine? Do you think it's more tonally appropriate, perhaps, that her future is peaceful on the whole and she protects her friends? Do you think they'll try to include her with some sort of time travel, dimensional shenanigans?
So, I know the next X-Men movie is about the Apocalypse kids.
Okay.
I have no idea what they're going to do with these other characters going forward. Honestly, I'm kind of okay with them just leaving it. Yeah. I love X-23 as a character both in the comics and in this movie, but I found that end very satisfying. Mm-hmm. I don't really think I need any more, and I don't know. I don't know where else you go from here with her.
Yeah. Brandon, what do you think?
Well, I think they could leave it alone. I think if they do revisit her, though, I think if they want to make sure that the message and tone that they left the movie on carries forward, at the end of the movie, when she's standing over his grave, she quotes that Western movie. And she says, life gives you a brand. I tried being good, but it didn't work out. A brand is a brand. Or I don't remember the exact quote exactly.
Killing gives you, once you kill somebody, it brands you, good or bad. Because, before someone said, she was I've hurt people, they were bad. And Logan says that it's all the same. Yeah. And then that movie is whether it's good or bad, killing leaves you with a brand, and you need to learn to live with that.
Yeah, and so I think she, in that quote, I think the movie is sort of telling us is that, and I think it's sort of the curse of being Logan's daughter, is that she will never be able to escape the violence that follows him. So I think she might give a peaceful life a try, but she won't get it. I see.
Sabretooth will come and kill and rape Silver Fox, and she'll end up meeting Ryan Reynolds.
I see her following a very similar path to Logan, tragically.
Yeah. What do you think, Carson?
I think they're gonna leave her alone from now on. Yeah. It's kind of sad, but I think they're gonna reboot the franchise.
Yeah. I think we all hope they will. My hope for Laura and X-23 from this movie is based on what Logan told her and the quote she gave from that movie, which I woefully have not looked up to find out the title of.
Posted in the video right here.
Logan says, "Don't be the weapon they made you to be."
Yeah.
And in that quote that she says from that movie, she says, "There are no more guns in the valley," which to me is symbolic of there are no more weapons here.
Yeah.
And so, ideally, I would like to think that she goes away and tries not to be violent. However, I think Brandon has a good point. Even if they never make another movie, Will the violence of her father follow her? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't live with 2 claws in your hand and claws in your feet and not kill somebody at some point.
Yeah,
somebody comes looking for you.
Because she also has combat conditioning, but also just Logan's rage. There's no way she's not gonna snap.
Her prom date's gonna die.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, closing thoughts. Let's start with Brandon. Closing thoughts. Any last comments?
Great performances. I think it was Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman's best performances as Xavier and Wolverine, respectively. I don't recall the name of the actress who plays Laura, but she did a great job. Performances across the board for our main cast were really solid. Probably the best they've gotten, and it provided us a nice finale to Wolverine's story. And it took them years, but they finally did it right. And I'm so glad it did. And I think it was worth the wait.
Yeah, I think it's nice to finally have a movie in the X-Men universe that gets what the X-Men are about.
Yeah, yeah.
And what a send-off.
Yeah. And the actor who plays X-23 is Daphne Keane.
Okay.
And she was brilliant.
Yeah.
Carson.
Yeah, this is definitely probably one of the better X-Men movies that have been kind of coming out. So I think that, for the end of Logan's story, this is a great way to end it. The same director directed Wolverine, which took place a lot in Japan and stuff. And I actually liked that film, probably 2/3 of it, until the last end with Silver Samurai and craziness.
Oh, God,
wasn't very interesting. But I really liked seeing the director. He probably learned a bunch from Wolverine.
Yeah.
And, took all that stuff he learned from Wolverine and brought it into Logan. And he knew he had to finish the story. And it was really satisfying to see it finally, the book close on Hugh, Patrick Stewart, and stuff like that. Like I said before, I kind of wish I got a little bit more payoff with Patrick dying. But it is what it is, and it was a really great film.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we've said quite a bit, but this movie was beautiful. It was beautifully shot, beautifully written, expertly executed by actors and directors across the board. Sound design was on point. Very few criticisms, and with the exception of that one shot after Professor X's funeral. But this movie is amazing. If you guys have not seen it, please go out. It deserves a theatrical viewing because it is a masterful theatrical experience.
You shouldn't be watching this if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, if at this point you haven't seen it,
Sorry.
But, everybody, share what you thought of Logan down in the comments below. Tell us what you liked about it. We shared a couple even conflicting opinions about something that happened in the movie. Let us know who you agree with. If you have other ideas about what happened in the movie, share it with us. So we really enjoyed Logan. We hope you guys enjoyed Logan. Brandon, as our captain of the ship, do you have any last send-offs?
Not much.
Announcements?
Just that you guys have been awarded some Geek XP. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay geeky, my friends.
Stay tuned, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Next time.
It's so warm in here.